They say HAARP can bend the skies, trigger storms, even control minds. But is it really a weapon hidden in plain sight? Or just another myth? Today, on Histology Hub, we uncover the truth behind HAARP. Have you ever looked up at a dark, swirling storm cloud and felt a sense of awe, and maybe a little bit of fear? Weather is one of the most powerful forces on our planet. It can bring gentle spring rains that help our gardens grow, or it can unleash devastating hurricanes and floods that reshape entire communities. Because weather is so powerful and sometimes so destructive, it's only natural for us to want to understand it, and perhaps even control it. This desire has led to some fascinating ideas, but also to some persistent and widespread conspiracy theories. One of the biggest and most enduring of these theories centers on a mysterious-sounding research facility in Alaska, known as HAARP. When a major disaster strikes, like the deadly floods that hit Valencia, Spain in late 2024, or the powerful hurricanes that sweep across the Atlantic, you might see claims pop up online. These posts often show strange images of antenna fields or unusual cloud formations and declare that the disaster was not natural. They claim it was manufactured, a deliberate act caused by a secret weapon. The name that almost always comes up is HAARP. The idea is that a shadowy group is using this technology to create earthquakes, steer hurricanes, and cause droughts, all for some secret, sinister purpose. It is a scary thought, and it taps into our deepest fears about losing control and being at the mercy of hidden powers. But is there any truth to these incredible claims? Is it possible that a scientific instrument in the far north is secretly pulling the strings of our global climate? This question has fueled debates for decades, creating a deep divide between what many people believe and what scientists say is actually possible. The story of HAARP is a perfect example of how a little bit of truth, mixed with a lot of misunderstanding and suspicion, can grow into a massive global conspiracy theory. To get to the bottom of it, we need to peel back the layers of myth and look at the real science, the real history, and the real reasons these ideas are so compelling to so many people. Before we dive into what HAARP is, it's important to understand why the idea of weather control is so captivating in the first place. Throughout human history, we have tried to influence the weather, from rain dances in ancient cultures to modern scientific experiments. The idea isn't new. The belief that someone, somewhere, has secretly perfected this technology plays on a common distrust of authority and a feeling that we are not being told the whole story. So, let's begin our journey by exploring the real history of weather modification, a story that is just as fascinating as the fiction, and see how these early attempts set the stage for the HAARP conspiracies we see today. The dream of controlling the weather is not a modern invention. It's as old as civilization itself. For centuries, people have sought ways to ask for rain during a drought or to wish away a coming storm. But it was in the 20th century that these dreams moved from the realm of ceremony into the world of science. In the 1940s, scientists made a groundbreaking discovery. They could seed clouds with particles like dry ice, frozen carbon dioxide, or silver iodide to encourage ice crystals to form, which could then lead to rain or snow. This was the birth of modern weather modification, and it kicked off an era of ambitious and sometimes controversial experiments by governments around the world. One of the most famous early attempts was called Project Cirrus. In 1947, the U.S. government decided to test cloud seeding on a hurricane. The idea was to see if they could weaken the storm by dropping crushed dry ice into its swirling clouds. A plane flew into a hurricane off the coast of Florida and released the material. Initially, nothing dramatic seemed to happen. However, the hurricane, which had been moving out to sea, suddenly changed course and slammed into Savannah, Georgia, causing significant damage. While scientists later concluded the storm's turn was a natural coincidence, one of the project's leaders publicly claimed responsibility, sparking public outrage and legal threats. It was an early, messy lesson in the unpredictability of meddling with nature. Perhaps the most notorious example of weather modification was a top-secret military program during the Vietnam War called Operation Popeye. From 1967 to 1972, the U.S. Air Force flew cloud seeding missions over parts of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. The goal was to extend the monsoon season, making it rain more heavily and for longer. The military hoped that the extra rainfall would soften roads, cause landslides, and disrupt the movement of enemy troops and supplies along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The program was hidden from the public and even from many in Congress until it was exposed by investigative journalists. The revelation that the U.S. military was using weather as a weapon caused a major international scandal. The history of projects like Cirrus and Popeye is crucial because it provides a kernel of truth to the conspiracy theories we hear today. Governments did research weather modification. They did try to alter storms and use rain as a tool of war. Though these programs were limited, controversial, and their effects were often debated, their existence confirmed that powerful organizations were interested in controlling the weather. This historical fact laid the groundwork for public suspicion. It made it easier for people to believe that, decades later, these secret programs had not ended but had simply evolved into something far more powerful and hidden, like the technology people imagine HAARP to be. So if HAARP isn't a secret weather machine, what is it? The name itself sounds a bit intimidating. High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. It's located in a remote part of Gakona, Alaska, and consists of a large field of 180 antennas. This isolated location and grid of strange-looking towers are part of what makes it seem so mysterious. But its real purpose is not to control the weather down here on the ground. Instead, HAARP is a scientific tool designed to study a layer of our atmosphere far, far above us called the ionosphere. This region starts about 30 miles up and extends to over 600 miles into space. Think of the ionosphere as a sea of electrically charged particles. This layer is important to us because it acts like a giant mirror for radio waves, allowing us to send radio communications over long distances around the curved surface of the Earth. HAARP's antennas work like a very powerful radio transmitter. They send a focused beam of high-frequency radio waves straight up into the ionosphere. When this energy hits the ionosphere, it temporarily heats a small patch of it, creating a brief, localized glow similar to a very faint artificial aurora. Scientists can then study how this patch of the ionosphere reacts, which helps them understand this complex and important part of our upper atmosphere. The key thing to understand is the massive difference in altitude. All of our weather, clouds, rain, snow, wind, and hurricanes, happens in a layer of the atmosphere called the troposphere. The troposphere is the lowest layer, extending only about 6 to 10 miles above the ground. The ionosphere, where HAARP focuses its energy, is dozens and even hundreds of miles higher up. The radio waves that HAARP sends are designed specifically to interact with the charged particles of the ionosphere. They pass right through the lower, neutral atmosphere of the troposphere without affecting it. Claiming HAARP controls the weather is like saying a flashlight pointed at the sky can make waves in the ocean. Scientists who work with HAARP, which is now run by the University of Alaska Fairbanks, emphasize how tiny its effects really are, even in the ionosphere. The amount of energy it sends up is incredibly small compared to the energy the ionosphere constantly receives from the sun. One expert compared HAARP's effect to throwing a grain of sand into a fast-flowing river. It creates a small, temporary disturbance that allows for study, but it is nowhere near powerful enough to influence massive energetic systems like global weather patterns, let alone trigger an earthquake. The facility is a research tool for learning, not a weapon for controlling the planet. Even though scientists are clear about what HAARP does, conspiracy theories continue to swirl, often gaining new life after major weather disasters. The year 2024 was a particularly active one for this kind of disinformation. In late October, catastrophic floods devastated the region of Valencia, Spain, leading to a tragic loss of more than 200 lives. Almost immediately, false claims began to spread like wildfire across social media platforms. Viral posts showed images of large ships and claimed they were weather modification vessels using HAARP technology to cause the deadly downpour. The narrative was powerful and persuasive, suggesting the tragedy was an intentional act. However, fact-checkers quickly debunked these claims. The ships shown in the viral posts were not secret weather weapons at all. They were identified as power ships, which are essentially floating power plants owned by a Turkish company. These vessels are designed to dock at ports and provide electricity to the local grid. Furthermore, investigations confirmed that these specific ships were nowhere near the coast of Valencia at the time of the floods. The disaster was caused by a natural and extremely intense weather phenomenon, but the speed and certainty of the online accusations showed how ready many people are to believe in a hidden hand guiding the storm. Just a few months earlier, during the fall of 2024, the United States was battered by hurricanes Helene and Milton. These powerful storms brought immense destruction, and with them came another surge of weather control conspiracy theories. The claims became so widespread that they prompted public officials to speak out. Deanne Criswell, the administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, stated that the volume of disinformation she saw was the worst she had ever seen. The theories were even amplified by political figures, such as Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who posted on social media, "Yes, they can control the weather," a statement President Joe Biden later dismissed as stupid. These recent examples from 2024 highlight a modern problem. In the age of social media, misinformation can travel faster than the storm itself. Scary-sounding but baseless claims about technologies like HAARP are shared millions of times, creating a false reality for many people trying to make sense of a tragedy. The theories provide a simple, albeit terrifying explanation for a complex and chaotic event. Instead of grappling with the science of climate change and extreme weather, it's easier to point a finger at a secret cabal with a weather machine. This cycle of disaster, followed by disinformation, has become a predictable and dangerous part of our modern information landscape. When it comes to the question of weather control, the scientific community and government agencies, well, they speak with a remarkably unified voice. Organizations like the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, which is the primary U.S. agency for weather forecasting and climate monitoring, are honestly unequivocal in their statements. According to NOAA, there is absolutely no technology in existence that can create, steer, or intentionally intensify a hurricane. Their mission is to observe, research, and predict weather, not to control it. The sophisticated tools they use, like the NEXRAD Doppler radar systems you see on weather maps, are observational tools only. They can see inside a storm, but they cannot influence it. Scientists who study the atmosphere and climate are equally firm. They explain that the amount of energy in a major weather system like a hurricane is immense, far beyond anything humans can generate and direct. A mature hurricane can release the energy equivalent of a 10-megaton nuclear bomb exploding every 20 minutes. The idea that a ground-based radio transmitter like HAARP, with its relatively tiny energy output, could influence such a colossal force is simply not supported by the laws of physics. They point to natural factors, like record-warm ocean temperatures and specific atmospheric patterns, as the real drivers behind the intensification of recent storms. Government agencies also directly address the rumors. NOAA's website actually has a dedicated page to debunk myths about weather modification. They clearly state that they do not conduct, fund, or oversee any such activities. They also address other popular conspiracy theories, such as chemtrails, explaining that the lines seen behind airplanes are normal condensation trails, contrails composed of water vapor. The University of Alaska Fairbanks, which now manages the HAARP facility, maintains an open-door policy. They host open houses where the public can visit, see the antennas, and ask scientists questions directly, all in an effort to promote transparency and dispel the myths surrounding their research. This overwhelming scientific consensus is really critical. While the history of Operation Popeye shows that governments have explored environmental modification in the past, the current scientific and official position is that large-scale weather control remains, quite firmly, in the realm of science fiction. The experts who dedicate their lives to studying our planet's climate system are not hiding a secret. They are trying to share what they know. They argue that focusing on baseless conspiracies about HAARP distracts from the real and pressing issues we face, such as understanding the effects of climate change and improving our ability to predict and prepare for the natural disasters that are becoming more frequent and intense. While creating or steering a hurricane is impossible, that doesn't mean all forms of weather modification are pure fantasy. One method, known as cloud seeding, is very real and has been practiced for decades. The process is much more modest than the grand conspiracies suggest. It doesn't create clouds out of thin air. Rather, it attempts to encourage existing clouds to produce more precipitation, either rain or snow, than they would naturally. It works by introducing tiny particles, called condensation nuclei, into specific types of clouds. The most common materials used are silver iodide or frozen carbon dioxide, which is also called dry ice. The theory behind cloud seeding is straightforward. For rain or snow to form, water vapor in a cloud needs something to cling to and freeze around. These tiny particles are called ice nuclei. In some clouds, these natural nuclei are scarce. By flying an airplane through the cloud or shooting flares from the ground up into it, scientists can release millions of tiny silver iodide particles. These particles act as artificial ice nuclei, giving the supercooled water droplets in the cloud a structure to freeze onto. As these ice crystals grow heavier, they eventually fall from the cloud as snow, which might melt into rain on its way down. So, does it work? The answer is a qualified yes, sometimes a little bit. The effects of cloud seeding are generally small, localized, and very difficult to measure definitively. Success depends heavily on having the right atmospheric conditions, including the right type of cloud at the right temperature. Cloud seeding is most commonly used in mountainous regions during the winter to try to increase the snowpack, which provides a vital source of water when it melts in the spring. Some private companies are hired by ski resorts to boost snowfall, and several countries, including China and Saudi Arabia, have national programs aimed at increasing rainfall for agriculture. Famously, China used cloud seeding to try and ensure clear skies for the 2008 Beijing Olympics opening ceremony by making it rain in surrounding areas beforehand. However, it is crucial to understand the limitations of this technology. Cloud seeding is a tool for enhancement, not creation. You cannot use it to end a drought because droughts are characterized by a lack of clouds and moisture in the first place. You cannot use it to create a storm system, stop a tornado, or steer a hurricane. The scale is completely different. Cloud seeding is a subtle nudge to a local weather process that is already happening. It's a far cry from the godlike power imagined in HAARP Conspiracies, where global weather patterns are supposedly controlled at the push of a button. The public and political fallout from Operation Popeye, the United States military's secret cloud seeding program in Vietnam, had a significant and lasting impact on international law. The revelation that a country was using the environment as a weapon of war was deeply alarming, not just to the public but to other world powers. The Soviet Union, in particular, grew concerned that the United States was developing capabilities that could be used against them. This mutual fear that environmental warfare could spiral out of control and lead to unpredictable, catastrophic consequences for everyone pushed the international community to take action. This led to the negotiation of a landmark treaty known as the Environmental Modification Convention, or ENMOD for short. Officially titled the Convention on the Prohibition of Military or Any Other Hostile Use of Environmental Modification Techniques, it was signed in Geneva in 1977 and entered into force the following year. The treaty's primary goal is to prevent countries from using the environment itself as a weapon. Specifically, it bans any military or hostile use of techniques that would have widespread, long-lasting, or severe effects on the planet. This includes attempts to cause earthquakes, tsunamis, or changes in weather patterns for hostile purposes. The ENMOD treaty was a product of its time, reflecting the Cold War-era anxiety about new and terrifying forms of warfare. Both the United States and the Soviet Union were key players in its creation, as each side worried about what the other might be developing in secret. By agreeing to ban weather warfare, they aimed to close the door on a dangerous new arms race before it could even begin. The treaty sent a clear message that the planet's natural systems should not be turned into battlefields. To this day, it remains one of the foundational agreements governing the rules of modern conflict. However, it's important to note what the treaty does not do. ENMOD does not prohibit the use of environmental modification for peaceful purposes. This means that activities like cloud seeding to increase rainfall for crops or research into other forms of weather modification are perfectly legal under international law, as long as they are not done for hostile reasons. The treaty's focus is narrowly on preventing large-scale, severe, and long-lasting environmental damage as a method of warfare. This distinction is important, as it acknowledges that some limited, peaceful research might continue while drawing a firm line against turning the weather into a weapon. While HAARP remains the star of many weather control conspiracies, it's not the only scientific project to attract suspicion. Any research that involves studying or potentially altering the atmosphere can quickly become a target for misinformation. One recent example is a Harvard University project called SCOPEX, which stood for Stratospheric Controlled Perturbation Experiment. The goal of SCOPEX was to conduct a small-scale field experiment to study the feasibility of solar geoengineering, an idea for counteracting global warming by reflecting a tiny amount of sunlight back into space. The plan was to release a small, non-toxic amount of aerosol particles into the stratosphere and observe how they behaved. However, the project faced significant public opposition and controversy. Critics worried that it was a slippery slope toward deploying a risky, world-altering technology without fully understanding the consequences. The idea of dimming the sun sounded alarming, and the project became a lightning rod for fears about scientists playing God with the climate. In the end, the controversy grew so intense that the project was officially canceled in March 2024, before any outdoor experiments were ever conducted. Like HAARP, SCOPEX was a research project, not an operational program, but it shows how easily scientific exploration can be perceived as a threat. The broader concept of solar geoengineering itself is another source of conspiracy theories. This is a purely theoretical field of study that explores potential ways to cool the planet in the face of climate change. The ideas are dramatic, ranging from placing giant mirrors in space to spraying aerosols into the stratosphere to mimic the cooling effect of a large volcanic eruption. It's important to stress that these are just ideas. No large-scale solar geoengineering is being conducted anywhere in the world. Yet, whenever an unusual weather event occurs, some people claim it is the result of secret geoengineering experiments. Scientists at agencies like NOAA have had to repeatedly debunk these claims, explaining that the extreme weather we are experiencing is driven by record-high ocean temperatures and natural climate variability, not by secret sun-dimming projects. The story of SCOPEX and the myths around solar geoengineering follow a familiar pattern. A real, but often misunderstood scientific concept is taken out of context and blended with a general distrust of authority. The result is a conspiracy theory that provides a simple but incorrect explanation for complex and frightening problems, diverting attention from the real causes and solutions we need to be discussing. So we've seen that HAARP is a research tool for studying the ionosphere, not a weather machine. We've learned that while limited cloud seeding is real, controlling large storms is impossible with today's technology. And we know that an international treaty has banned weather warfare for decades. Why then do these conspiracy theories persist and even grow stronger? The answer has less to do with antennas in Alaska and more to do with human psychology. When we face forces that are huge, unpredictable, and frightening, like a hurricane, an earthquake, or a flood, our brains search for patterns and for a sense of control. It can be deeply unsettling to accept that a natural disaster is a random, chaotic event. Ascribing the event to a secret group with a weather machine, as scary as that sounds, provides a kind of comfort. It replaces chaos with order. It suggests that someone is in charge, even if their intentions are evil. This creates a clear enemy to blame, which can feel more manageable than confronting the terrifying reality of nature's indiscriminate power, or the complex, slow-moving crisis of global climate change. These theories offer simple explanations for complex problems, and in a confusing world, simplicity is very appealing. The historical kernels of truth also provide fertile ground for these myths to grow. We know governments have conducted secret experiments in the past, like Operation Popeye. This history creates a powerful sense of distrust. If they did that then, the thinking goes, what else might they be doing now? This suspicion is fueled by a lack of transparency and the sometimes intimidating complexity of science. When scientific concepts are difficult to understand, it leaves a void that can easily be filled by misinformation that is simple, dramatic, and emotionally resonant. In the age of social media, these compelling but false narratives can spread around the globe in a matter of hours. Ultimately, separating fact from fiction requires us to embrace curiosity and critical thinking. It means accepting that some events are beyond our control, and that reality is often more complex than any conspiracy theory. The truth about HAARP is that it is a tool for science, not a weapon of war. The truth about the weather is that it is a powerful natural force, increasingly affected by a changing climate, not by a secret machine. By understanding the real science and the real reasons these myths are so popular, we can better navigate the storms of misinformation and focus on the real challenges and wonders of the world around us.